Blog Talk Radio.
Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. And I am the light within your soul. In the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle whole. And here we stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign. But to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And in the presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I see aspiring to be free. And when I call to thee, and come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading light and love. Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. And I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Within and without, above and below, yeah. East, west, north and south, I sense your presence. Without and within, below and above, yeah, yeah. East, west, north and south, I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I find in tune with the divine. And here we stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign. But to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And I am the light within your soul. In the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle whole. And when I call to thee, and come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading light and love. Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. For to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Holy Angel of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. I sense your presence.
Thank you for joining me tonight on Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. My name is Jessie Ann Nichols George, and I am your hostess. The music you heard there at the beginning of the show is I Sense Your Presence. It's by Shemshai. And I want to welcome those that, whether you're returning to us and a regular listener here, or whether you're joining us for the first time, it's really great to have you here this evening. Now, here on Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour, I focus on helping people find and use compassion in their everyday lives. And as far as my work goes, I've created the Genesis Clearing Statement, which some of you have experienced on a previous show. If you haven't seen that in the past or worked with that in the past, you can go back to our archived shows and you'll find it in there. In addition, I've created the Compassion Tour, which is a multi-state nationwide tour, and that includes workshops, retreats, seminars, book signings, and fundraising events. I have finished up the 2012 tour, but I'm already working on setting up venues and events for 2013. And if you'd like to follow what's available to register for on the Compassion Tour, you can always go to www.jessieannicholsgeorge.eventbrite.com. And there's also an option there for those of you that just want to support me getting out, for example, to those fundraisers and getting out to people around the country. And actually, I'm going to be branching out of the U.S. in 2013. That's the plan anyways. And you can just select the option gifting the tour, and you can put in any amount that you choose to give for that. Here at Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour, I look at different ways that compassion exists in our lives. I look at how to remove our blocks, resistances, frustrations, and some weeks I'm discussing different aspects of how compassion is working in our lives, how it affects us, and the different areas of compassion. And then some weeks I'm doing more exercises and practical implementations on the shows, meditations, things like that. And then other times I have guests on the show so that you can learn about their work and how other things that are out there that people are doing complement and work with compassion and how that generates compassion in your life. So as I've mentioned, I highlight different musical artists. Right now I've been highlighting Shemshai on my show. And then also I'll have nights that are just call-in coaching nights where people can call in and ask questions and get some intuitive coaching work to help them out with what's happening in their life and to help them make those breakthroughs that are going on or that they're trying to work on. And just keep in mind that when you're sharing your experiences, whether it's with me or whether it's with one of my guests and we're working with you on the show, that you're helping a lot of other people out there, because whatever you're dealing with, chances are other people out there are knowing somebody that's dealing with the same thing, or they might be dealing with that same thing as well. So it's important to share and to ask the questions and get in there. Now, on tonight's show, I've got Bob Burns as my guest, and we're going to be looking at relationships, beliefs, and behaviors tonight. So he's got a lot of really, really interesting information to share with us, and we're going to be bringing him on in just a few minutes here. And if you want to, you can go ahead and call in on our live lines, and the number that you use to do that with is 760-542-4345. So again, that's 760-542-4345. It's right there at the top of the screen. And you just press 1 to get into my caller queue, and that will get you to where you can ask the questions to either myself or Bob. And I'm also going to watch in the chat area, too, because I know we have some people that are there in the chat, and sometimes they're asking questions there. They're not in a position to call in. So you're welcome to type your questions in there as well. And just a reminder, if you enjoy the show tonight, make sure that you tell your friends, your family, significant others, Facebook connections, anybody else that you feel inspired to share it with. And they can also listen to the show in the archive, so they just use the same link to get into as you use to come into the show. And then that will allow them to listen to it and enjoy it as well. And they can also go to my Activating Compassion Facebook page, which is at facebook.com/Activating Compassion /notes. And that will get them right into where all the archive shows are, and that will allow them to listen into as many as they would like to. So I see Romelia's come into the chat room here tonight. Hi, Romelia. Hope you're doing well. And before we get started, what I like to do at the beginning of my show is to delve into the 72 Names of God by Yehuda Berg. And I know some of you that have listened in before do realize that I like to use Yehuda's work. He's a master or a major authority on Kabbalah, and I just like it because it's such simplified terms. It's everyday terms. It's things that apply to our everyday life when he's talking about his work. And I like to just randomly open up at the beginning of every show and use this book to just kind of get us like a little message and see, you know, what we have to be shared this week on the show from him, from Yehuda and his work. And as I'm opening tonight, and I always find it's always interesting how the messages, they always seem to apply to the guest I have on the show or the topic I'm working with that night or what we're doing. And it's interesting, tonight comes up with, the name that we have tonight is happiness. And it says here from Yehuda, there is an old saying, be careful what you wish for. And I think Bob's probably laughing out there right now because he's probably thinking, wow, this is really going to apply here. And he goes on to say, Yehuda goes on to say, too often we confuse temporary pleasure with enduring happiness because the trappings of the physical world are highly seductive and potent. When we are able to distinguish between the two, we will find true happiness. Pleasure is usually associated with egocentric desires, whereas happiness is linked to the longings of the soul. By and large, our desires emerge from the selfish side of our nature. What we covet is not necessarily what will bring us lasting fulfillment. Happiness eludes us when we chase after what we want as opposed to what we need. Our desires and cravings generally bring misfortune and turmoil after the initial pleasures and immediate gratifications have worn off. We find true happiness when our lives are spent transcending our ego-based impulses to steadfastly pursue what our souls need for transformation and elevation. In other words, when we're busy doing what we came to this earth to do in terms of spiritual work, we will meet deep-seated fulfillment every step of the way. Now, I find this very, very interesting to think about and to grab onto this concept because we live in such an immediate gratification society for the most part, and I've noticed that with some of the upcoming generations that it's a very immediate gratification. I've got to have it now. I've got to have a response in 5 seconds. I mean, oh my gosh, you know, my friend hasn't replied to me in 2 hours, and it's very interesting because having grown up in a generation where we didn't have all of that instant messaging constantly available to us, you know, you might have waited days, and a couple of hours was a short amount of time to wait for somebody to get back to you a lot of times. So it's very, very interesting, that shift. And when we look at this in relation to compassion, I mean, living that compassionate life is really very much about finding your true happiness. It's very much about finding that spiritual fulfillment, that lasting fulfillment. So we're not looking for just that 2-second gratification. We're looking for that lifetime gratification when we talk about happiness. Now, he goes on to say the meditation part of this is you find the strength to restrain selfish longings. Through this name, you are asking for what your soul needs, not what your ego wants. You find deep appreciation for whatever life brings you. This brings you happiness in the deepest sense. So it's about focusing on what our soul needs, which is actually true fulfillment. It's that lasting satisfaction. That's not even a word, I don't think. Being satisfied, fulfillment, and finding that deep appreciation, that sense of just having everything come together. And this is really going to tie into our theme tonight with Bob. Now, the way that this name is pronounced, the way God is called upon for happiness is pronounced Vav He Vav. So Vav He Vav is what calls happiness that is lasting and fulfills our soul needs. So there we go. That's our message from Yehuda tonight. And our guest, I'm going to be bringing him on right away here tonight because he's got a wealth of information to share with us. Bob Burns is my guest. He is an author, a workshop presenter, motivational speaker. He has been involved with meditation, motivation, educational therapies, and workshops for over 20 years. He is a master clinical hypnotherapist, master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, Reiki master, and motivational strategist. So he's got a lot of things here. He's got a wealth of information of how to have successful relationships and in helping us to understand the patterns that we have in our lives and in how to make the changes and the transformations that we're seeking to make. And this is a really important thing because with these changes and these transformations, and when we're particularly looking at relationships, we follow different patterns. Same patterns come up over and over again a lot of times in our relationships, and they're there to help us grow and to help us learn from them. And the reason I wanted to bring Bob on at this time of year and talk about relationships this time of year is because we have so many people that are looking for relationships, so many people that are feeling lonely, trying to feel this pressing need to get into a relationship right now. It's a time when there can be a lot of stress and tension on relationships as well, and that really will test our compassion levels. There's no doubt about that. At times it can, and in other times it really is our opportunity to grow closer to somebody as well. And I think at this time people get very nervous. I mean, a lot of times women are very nervous about are they going to be included in things and are they going to have involvement in different things with the holidays, and men are nervous a lot of times because there's a lot of pressure there. Am I going to buy the right thing? Am I going to do the right thing? Am I going to mess up? So it's a very romantic time. It's a very relationship building time, but we want to make sure that we're clearing some of those patterns and that we're working through them and we know how to deal with them as well as being aware of them. So when I look at this, Bob has authored books and created products to help others in this process of working through these transformations. And I'm going to go ahead and bring Bob on here. Bob, welcome to Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I was very interested. You said Bob is probably laughing at this. I was smiling when you were talking about something. But I wanted to bring up, I don't know how many people are aware of the acronym that EGO is, and it's an acronym, Ease God Out. And I think that is something that, you know, when you begin to realize what your ego is, it's separateness. I don't need anybody. It's ease God out. And that means you're turning your back. That's my definition of ego anyhow. I've heard it said many other ways. The other thing is you'd mentioned about your purpose. We all come here with a purpose. I mean, that's been stated by many people. And in my book of quotes, which you had mentioned some of the books, it's quotes, poems, and metaphors. And one of the quotes I put in there that was one of my favorites is, once you discover your purpose in life, you will realize you've always known it. So, anyway, what are we going to discuss tonight?
That's so true, because I find that, you know, we do always know it in us. And I think when we're ready to bring it out, but we're not sure how to bring it out or what to do to bring it out with that purpose, I find that with the people I work with anyways, they're really hitting this big wall. And they're just so frustrated, and they're just like, just tell me what my purpose is. And it's like, I can't. You're the only one that knows it.
Exactly. You're the only one that knows your purpose. I mean, people will tell you, you're really good at this or you're really good at that. But if you don't feel right about it, the key word there is feel, because we are feeling individuals, not intellectual individuals. We come into this world as feeling individuals. So if something feels right to you, then that chances are very good that it's your purpose or is skirting right around your purpose when you zero in on it. And I don't think there's too many people that find their purpose until they're in their 30s, 40s, or 50s. Because, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think I would agree with you for the most part. I think there are those few people that really know very young, this is what I want to do without a doubt. And I think there's so many things that we can be good at, but they're not necessarily the things that we want to get up and do every day of our life. Like, I might be really great, for example, at customer service, but that doesn't mean I want to go work a customer service job.
No, definitely.
For the rest of my life, that doesn't feel like life purpose. So I wanted, that's one of those things when we're looking at life purpose for people to keep in mind. It's not just what you're good at, but it's, what do you feel driven to do? What makes you kind of tingle inside?
Exactly. And my purpose, quite honestly, speaking for myself and only myself, it took me a while to discover it. I think I was in my 40s when I finally came to the conclusion what my purpose was. But it's helping other people. And I don't know if I shared with you, I'm a recovering alcoholic, but I've been sober over 29 years. And people have helped me out a lot. And I'm in the process now of giving that back. I want to help other people. I want to help other people grow. I've been certified to train people in certain modalities. And, I've written 3 books. I have a 4th one almost done. And I just find that information, as I take it in, I want to put it back out there again, and I put it back out in my own words. So, I think our purpose is to help others, but some people help as a doctor, some people help as a nurse, some people help as a therapist, some people help as a motivator. I mean, some people help as a writer. It's all in the modality, that you're helping. And I think God knows what we're all supposed to be doing, but it takes a while for us to figure it out because there's so many distractions growing up. Because we come into this life knowing, but there's so many distractions. There's religion, there's your parents, there's, and so many people think that they have to live their parents' thought. And in the first page of my book on relationships, the first or second page, I tell of my youngest daughter was in a track meet, and I was standing behind and I was watching her. I think she was in the 7th or 8th grade. And there were 2 women standing in front of me, Jess, and one of them said to the other one, I told my daughter to grow up and marry a doctor. And I tapped her on the shoulder, and she turned around. I said, I told my daughter to grow up and be a doctor. And I don't care if she's a doctor or not, but I can't see people bringing their kids up to be dependent on somebody else. And that's where that came from.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And there are all of these different ones, different sources that are these distractions to us along the way. And I love that you brought out that point, because I know when I'm working with people to help them find their passion, to find that piece that they want to go out and explore, because I know you had a whole career of stuff before you came onto the path that you're on now, and likewise I did too. I've had I don't know how many careers along the way of things.
Exactly.
And I think people forget that, we are helping people. We are these messengers in all these different capacities. And it's not limited. Like you say, it's not limited to just doctors or just, a certain type of field or counselors or things like that. There's all these different avenues.
Exactly.
And you're not limited. The whole world is out there. Bob, I've actually got somebody in the phone lines here that's got a question, and I'd like to go ahead and bring them on here and see what they have to say. This is going to be 678 area code. And you are live on the air.
I'll unmute myself. I am unmuted.
You are unmuted. You're live on the air.
Oh,
did you have a question for Bob tonight?
I did. Thank you so much for taking my call. I was just calling because I'm in this, I'm an artist, and I've been a graphic artist professionally, but an artist since I could hold a crayon. And tonight I just had a breakthrough, and it's heartbreaking, and it's, heartbreaking. I realized I lost my best friend about, I guess it was 6 years ago, and for the last few weeks I've just had this constant droning in my head of this vision of something that I doodled and I sketched and I doodled and I sketched, and finally in the last 2 days I painted it. And my first thought was, I'm going to give it to my best friend's daughter who survived, of course, her death. And then it hit me tonight that I had not painted since she died. And I just have cried because, again, her death just touched me in such a way that I did not realize that I quit creating. And then the moment I was ready, to start creating again, the first thing I've done, I wanted to give to her daughter. And I guess my question, if I have a question, is how does life stop those instincts you have? Like your love of creating or your drive to create. It just sort of stalled it, and I had not realized that it was stalled until the last week. And I'm floored. I'm so floored.
Mm-hmm.
Heavy.
Is that a question for me?
Sorry. Yeah.
That's for you, Bob.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm floored myself. I had no idea.
No. Don't worry about it. What you're going through, you say, how long ago did this person pass?
It was like 6 years. I had not realized.
Okay.
I had not realized.
I find that when you, based on what I heard, okay, I don't know you, but based on what I heard, I would say there's a couple of factors that come into play. Number one, if this was that close of a friend of yours, you most likely, at a very deep level, made the connection of your artwork with your friendship with this person. And Absolutely. That is what is referred to as a neuroassociation. And when you make an association like that, when part of it's broken, it's hard or difficult, I might say, to pick up and take off like you were. That will come back, but it's going to take time. But it might be a good idea to tie yourself to some other things. Now, I know my mother passed away, about 20 years ago, and I still keep thinking I got to give her a call, which means she's around me. And
yeah.
I firmly believe that. And your friend could be the same way. But, you said something about doing some artwork to give to her daughter.
Yeah. I did it.
Well, that would
did it.
That would be the tie. Yeah, that would be the tie. And once you say you did it?
Yeah, I already did it. And then I looked at it and I thought, there's nobody else in my circle that needs it more than her. And then I realized I had not painted since her mother died. I'm a painter. It's what I do. I've always done it.
Have you painted since you gave her what you did?
No. No, I just did it 2 days ago and realized that I had not painted since her mother died 6 years ago. And it just freaked me out. I couldn't believe it.
Well, what I would suggest you do, if there's something else that you could tie your emotions to, I know 6 years is a long time, but it's not really a long time. In the spiritual realm, 6 years is only a few minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I realize.
And yeah, it's like people say, well, my God, it's been 6 years, let it go. It doesn't work that way. It works that way, to people who don't understand it. What I would tie myself to if I was you is I would take a piece of music or something that you really enjoy and take an hour each day and play that music and do your painting again. And what will happen over a very short period of time, perhaps maybe no longer than a week and a half, you will make a new connection. And when you make a new connection, then you'll be able to start painting again. And you will tie your painting to the music or something else.
That is so funny you said that, because
sensitive, if you're that sensitive, which it's a good thing to be sensitive. I'm very sensitive myself. What I would do is not tie it to another person, because people will leave us.
They always. I understand that. I lost my brother at 12, my father at 19, and her. But for some reason, and it's funny you say that about music, because I just painted lyrics to a song on that painting. And it was Tesla, Love Is All Around You. And I always put lyrics in my paintings because I love music that much. I think it's like poetry, emotion. And it always kind of ties it together for me. So
music evokes a lot of emotion. But anyhow, I'm sorry.
It's amazing. No, you're absolutely right. It does evoke a lot of emotion, and it's amazing and therapeutic, and it's like our poetry, our modern poetry.
And it's amazing how that music will actually come through the art too, and will reach into the hearts of people, because you can tell that. You can tell when somebody, it's as we were talking about the differences between the ego and the true self or the true happiness. And you can tell when somebody is doing something for money and when they're doing it because they have a passion for it. And having that music into your art and putting that music into your art is such a gift. Not everybody has that gift, but that is one of your ways to share and to express and to teach and to heal the world is through that.
Oh, yeah, music will help. I know when I was writing my book, I got to the last 3 or 4 chapters. I couldn't write. I hit a blank because I can only write when I'm emotional. But I have a CD that some of you may have heard of. It's called A Gift of Love by Deepak Chopra, and it's Rumi's poetry read to music by different people. And I played that for a couple of times, and I finished the book.
Really?
I mean, oh, yeah, it's very, it's the most beautiful CD I've ever heard. And
I'm writing it down now.
Yeah, Gift of Love.
Gift of Love by Deepak. He's
Chopra.
amazing.
Yeah, and
That's
it's probably something you'll have to get online, because it's been around for a long, long time, and it took me a while to find it because I had lent one out and I never got it back, and then I finally found it again. Now I hold on to it. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Nice. So I guess I had hit a block for 6 years and had not even realized it. And when I put that brush back in my hand and started to feel it again, I thought, oh, my God. I mean, it was I just had this, like, full circle epiphany. The last painting I painted was for her mother because I was raising money for her therapy, and I had not painted since. And I couldn't believe that I had not picked up a brush since, I was doing it for her life, and now her daughter's still here, and we have a relationship, and oh, my God. And that painting I did, I mean, I know it's for her. I just hope it's not too heavy, but it's full of love,
but
so hopefully.
We, at the emotional level, link to things, and we're not even aware that we do link to things. I refer to them as anchors. In other words, you anchor yourself to something, like certain smells will bring back certain memories from childhood, et cetera, et cetera. But if you can form a new anchor, form a new one, and I think that music would probably be the best thing to do, because music evokes emotion. And I know people who are creative, that write, that paint, that draw, or whatever it is, when you have music playing, your creativity comes out more. So that might be a good avenue for you to take and give that a shot, and then you'll be able to break through. You'll be able to break through it.
I think so. So it's not a danger to, share the art with her daughter.
Well, I think that's very, very sweet. Really, I really do. And just form that new link, and then just keep moving on and enjoying yourself. And take each day, because people say, Bob, it's good to see you. And I say, it's good to be seen, because when you're underground, you can't be seen.
Well, my grandmother always says, because she's still living, I'm going to wiggle while I can, because when I'm dead, I won't be wiggling. So she wiggles, 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 So we just have to keep wiggling.
Here you go.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
Well, I hope the answer helped you.
It did.
Good.
You're very welcome, and I'm glad that you shared that with everyone tonight, because it does bring out that aspect of how sometimes we don't even realize that our emotions are blocked, and we don't even realize that they're being held back until we have something, for example, like a death in our life, and that gets the emotions to release that have been just sitting there creating pressure. And once they release, then it's like that deep breath of fresh air, or that piece of relaxation at the end of a long day, or it's equivalent to that, because everything just kind of lets go.
It's true. You start with something that helps you cope, and then you forget to tap back into it to help you continue to cope. And I'm just glad I've figured that out, because it's a hell of a lot cheaper than therapy.
Oh, yeah. Well, most therapists, are in the same boat that you are, and that's why we became therapists. But, in other words, it's a matter of understanding.
I don't fault therapists, but I do feel that, sometimes we have our own coping mechanisms that work for us. And, I've gone to therapists for years. I couldn't live without, the good ones that I found. But we do have our own ways of helping us, whether it's cooking. We all have creativity. It's just hidden. Some people are great with animals or cooking, or mine just happens to be art. So I'm glad I found it again.
Well, I'm glad that you found it too.
Yeah, and write it down so you don't forget it.
I'm not. I won't.
I know. I heard a saying once I really liked. It said, "The dullest pencil is better than the sharpest mind." Write it down.
I love that. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, and God bless you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks for calling in. Okay, great information, Bob. I really appreciate that. That's, and these are the things that our listeners need to find out about and hear about, and that I know you've got so much to share with us. I know
we all
started...
link, Jesse. I'm sorry, excuse me. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
Okay, now I was going to say we all have certain things that we link certain feelings to, and I refer to them as anchors. And when I'm going to work with somebody, for example, if I'm going to do a past life regression with somebody, I will anchor them to a good feeling, because you don't know where somebody's going to go in their emotional body, and you want to be able to bring them back happy and smiling. And, so we all have things that we link to. When I first did my first public speech, my first paid speech was at the Flamingo Hilton in Las Vegas, Nevada. And you talk about nervous. I was going to wear a diaper. I was a wreck. But anyway, I went and did it. But what I did was I built myself an anchor, and I listened to a couple of comedies, and I got myself laughing. And when I laughed, I put my thumb, forefinger, and middle finger against each other and squeezed them when I was laughing so hard. And when I was being introduced out in Las Vegas, I squeezed those fingers together, and I didn't laugh, but I felt good. So I created that anchor for me anytime I was going to be introduced. I don't use it anymore, but I did for the first 5 to 10 times I was introduced to speak. But, we all have different things, and I have found for me and people who, when she said she was an artist, I know people who are artists, writers, and so on, usually are very creative and emotional, and people who are emotional can link to music faster than other things. Because certain music we tie things to, because music gets inside of me. When I sit and listen to Phantom of the Opera music, I get teary because I think it's so magnificent. And, different kinds of things like that from plays and everything. When I was been in Vegas and played, when you hear the music and it's so overpowering. The Crystal Cathedral, I couldn't talk for 20 minutes when I went into the Crystal Cathedral in Garden Grove, California, because the organ was so overwhelming. If I opened my mouth, I would have burst into tears. So, music is a good thing to link to. That's why I brought that up with her.
And it is, and they've definitely proven in different research studies and things that music has a tremendous effect on our brain wave patterns, on our receptivity to messages. And you created your own anchor, but as people know, they can all create their own anchor as well when they're doing something. Exactly. And that simple gesture of putting fingers together or something like that, and it will actually start to program the brain into where it automatically makes that association. You call it an anchor. And it's that automatic association that we can tap into. And I encourage people to do that, to create those anchors for themselves with the different emotions, because it does make a difference. And it's one of those things that you can do so subtly that nobody else knows what you're doing.
Oh, I know. I mean, it's something you can do with your hand down beside you or even in your pocket if you want to use your hand for something.
Exactly. So. Exactly, and it can be just that. It can just be cupping your hands for a moment. It just can be the slightest little thing, and I think a very valuable tool to have.
Oh, yeah. I remember I did a lot of work with Mary Kay Cosmetics over the years, and I was down in Florida, and I was working with this one director, and she wanted to get into the gray car. So I got her to the point where she was so excited about the gray car. That was the Grand Prix Pontiac back then. And she was so excited, and I had her squeeze her fingers together, her thumb and her forefinger together on her right hand, because the right indicates the future to the brain. The left is the past, it's memory. And so I had her squeeze the fingers to her thumb and forefinger together on her right hand, and I had her actually laughing and thinking and feeling the fact that she was in that car. And she called me up when I got back home about a couple of weeks later, and she said, Bob, she said, it's weird. And I said, what? She said, every time I see a gray car, whether it's a Mary Kay car or not, she said, I happen to look and my fingers are together on my right hand. That's powerful. Yeah.
It really is. It really is. We have a radio show host on our network here that works with the Yellow VW, and that's Kevin Baird. And he has a whole story behind the Yellow VW, which has now been incorporated in several different movies and TV series and things like that. And it has to do with the message of every time you see a yellow VW bug, that it's a symbol of happiness or joy ready to enter your life and blessing. And I've also got another listener that was affirming about listening to music, saying that discourses have said in singing form is the best way to connect with our spiritual feelings, and that our discourses are mostly in singing form or musical. So it's really interesting that is a huge way to empower ourselves and to create some of these things. So
and I know I recommend. Go ahead.
You just have so many things here to share, so go ahead and keep going.
Okay. Thank you. That CD that I mentioned, The Gift of Love by Deepak Chopra, there's a whole bunch of different people on there reading Rumi's poetry. And for people who do not know who Rumi is, he was a poet in the 12th century. And some of the things that he wrote were so far beyond his time. I mean, one of the lines in one of his poems is, cut yourself loose from the chains that hold you prisoner to the world of attachment. And I thought that was pretty powerful for the 12th. It's powerful now, but for the 12th century. But the music there is absolutely incredible. Madonna reads poetry in that CD. Martin Sheen, Rosa Parks, Demi Moore. I mean, everybody reads at least one poem. And Deepak reads several. And it's a beautiful CD, and it lasts exactly 1 hour. And you can probably get it online someplace, but I would recommend it highly. It is wonderful, and it's informative and everything. Music, to me, is a true motivator, and I've participated in a lot of classes with music therapy. But I keep telling people I think I'm a wimp, because every time I hear certain sounds, certain music, certain chords, and so on, I get very, very emotional. And I had this friend of mine. Her name is Lori, and she's a shiatsu master. And she said to me, that's because it gets inside of you, and you're getting closer and closer to source as you grow. And she said it's starting to trigger internal memories in you. And I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful. Very interesting indeed. So what direction would you like to go in? We could discuss my book. We could discuss different things. I mean, I've got a myriad of things to talk about, but I'm not quite sure which direction we're going to go in, unless we're going to talk about beliefs and behaviors, which is one of my favorite seminars. I gave one last Sunday on raising your level of deserve. And
well, I definitely want to tie that in, because I know you have two books out there that maybe we can kind of interrelate them a little bit, and one of them is the Inner Dynamics of Beliefs and Behaviors, and the other is
the Inner Dynamics of Successful Relationships, and the other one is Quotes, Poems, and Metaphors. And the Beliefs and Behaviors book, hopefully, if I can finish it up, it'll be out in January or February at the latest.
Okay, so we've got, I think working with the successful relationships and the beliefs and the behaviors would be two areas that I would like to key in tonight on.
Okay, well, the inner dynamics, the word inner infers to the fact that it's below the level of consciousness. In other words, why are we attracted to certain people? And, I've had people say to me, I've had one woman say to me, I met this guy, God, I love him so much. I said, how long have you known him? A week. And I love him so much, or I love her so much. And my question to people who say things like that is, would you give them a kidney if they needed it? And the answer is usually a resounding no. And people seem to think that infatuation or attraction or magnetism is love. Actually, to me, love is when spirits touch. We all are attracted to certain types. I'm attracted to behaviors more than I am appearance. But, somebody who aligns with me, I can become very attracted to. It doesn't mean I'm in love with them. It just means I like them. But a lot of people get that mixed up. And that's why I think the divorce rate is so high. Now, I've been married and divorced 2 times. Okay, and I know why I got married the first time was because it was my high school sweetheart, and I met her when I was 17, she was 15, and I was so in love it was unbelievable. When I was 23 and she was 21, we got married. When I was 35 and she was 33, we got divorced. Then when I was 39, I got married again, and it was the same thing. It was infatuation. It wasn't true love because it died on both of them. And that's why, quite honestly, I'm a little bit leery, but I'm very careful about who I go out with now. And my daughters, God bless them, I've got 3. The one in particular, the 2, have told me, Dad, your book is great. Why don't you read it? And I said, I did, but you're not doing what it says. So, knowing is one thing, doing is another. It's amazing, but what I wrote in the book were things that I have learned through interviewing people in my practice, what I have read in other books, but whenever I've read something in another book, I use that author and I quote them, and I say, this came from, and it's all in quotes and so on. And then the other one is, my own life experiences. And I tell people, when you're reading that book, 25% of it is about my experiences, but you're going to have to figure it out yourself, which one. But it's fascinating. I've got 6 endorsements on it, and a college professor, 4 Mary Kay directors, and a success coach out in Southern California. And they've all endorsed it. And the coach said, she said, everybody in the country, everybody in the world should have a copy of this. And I said, if they did, I would never have to work again. 6 billion people, yeah, that'd be great. But I mean, it's a good book, and I mean, it's available on Amazon on Kindle. It's only $7.99 on Kindle. So, but it's very interesting. And I was reading it before I called in, and I wanted to update because I haven't read it for a while, and I've had a bunch of them and I've sold them all, but I don't know what Amazon's doing with it. The other book is that's coming out is Beliefs and Behaviors, and I think that basically is involving we behave the way we believe we are supposed to by our upbringing, and that nothing could be further from the truth. And I think if anybody in the listening out there, or if you or anybody had seen that movie Dead Poets Society many, many years ago, that is a classic that I think should be shown in schools. Because there's that one kid that killed himself because he didn't want to do what his father wanted him to do, but he couldn't stand displeasing his father, so he shot himself in that movie. And, we all come to this earth with a purpose. That was another book I wrote, 83 pages, and never had it published, called, what was it called? Let me see. Oh, what we came here for. It was about know everything that we come here for. We come here with a purpose. We know everything. And I never really got a title on it, but I wrote 83 pages, and then I just scrapped it. But, we all come with a purpose. And Louise Hay said that. I've heard a lot of people say we come with a purpose. Debbie Ford is another author that said, yes, we come with a purpose. And I've always believed that we come with a purpose. But the only thing is, with all of the distractions going on, it's when do we find our purpose? I mean, when we're born, we're living our parents' purpose. Then we're living our teacher's purpose. Then we're living the religion's purpose that we go to, that we're taken to. I took my daughters a month in each different religion so they could pick what they wanted, and that's what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to be free to choose, but you can't choose if you don't know what you're choosing from. So that was my philosophy. I took them a month to each different church religion, and so Beliefs and Behaviors, that's going to be an interesting book. It really is. I'm having a blast writing it. The only reason it's taking so long is every time I sit down to write, I come up with more ideas. This should have been finished about 6 months ago, but it's getting longer and longer.
Well,
and I'm sure you're probably familiar with that process, too.
Yeah, sometimes I think so. It does come that way. I've got a set that I'm working on that's focused on relationships, and I'm just starting to do kind of the drafting and the outlines and the chapter concepts and things like that, and there's just more and more that's coming in because there's so much to relationships, and these behaviors and patterns that we learn definitely play into our relationships tremendously along the way. And I think that's a great idea to get out there and take the kids to the different religions and let them choose and let them understand and see what they have. And
right.
You talk about that life purpose, and I couldn't tell you how many times I have people coming to me saying, what is my life purpose, and how do I find it now, and when is it going to come to me? And it's like, when you start the journey.
Yeah, when you start the journey, when you allow it, you can't force it, you have to allow it.
You have to allow it, and you have to open up, and I find that so many people, they want to know the whole thing right now, and it's like you're not going to know it because it's going to unfold during that journey. And you just have to start with what you love and what you like and then build from there. And with relationships, I get a lot of the same thing where I have a lot of clients that are calling me. It's like, is he going to propose to me, for New Year's or Valentine's Day? Or, we're in this time where from Thanksgiving through Valentine's Day, we see a lot of women hoping to get a proposal, a lot of men feeling the pressure to propose. people are wanting to find someone to share the holidays with. They want to be in love. They want to have these experiences. And,
right.
It comes down to forget about the destination. There's no rush to get there. Because if you're focused on that destination of when am I going to get the marriage proposal, when am I going to get married, when am I going to have kids, you're going to miss the good stuff. You're
Exactly.
going to miss the whole journey. And all we want to do is stop and take that breath and focus on today. What's the moment? What's the moment that we're getting to share with this person? Because if you're so focused on that destination, you're going to miss that moment.
Yeah, you're going to miss the moment. And the thing is, too, if you're so focused on finding somebody to love and you feel that you need somebody, what's going to happen if you need somebody, if somebody is decent looking and can fog a mirror, you'll take them, But when you want somebody, and I've always said that you will attract into your life what you think about yourself. In other words, if you have good self-esteem and you really like yourself, you're going to attract somebody who is basically the same. If you're needy and you're desperate and you're searching, you're going to find somebody who is needy, desperate, and searching, and it's not going to last.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens. And the three things that keep a relationship going, I'm going to read it in my book. I'm just going to read you the titles. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but there's only three things, and one of them is intellectual stimulation. The other one is emotional trust. And the least important, and yet is the most important in the very beginning, is physical attraction. And those are the three components to a healthy relationship that I have listed in my book. And I've got information underneath each one, which I'm not going to read, but it would take too long. But those are the three things. And if you enjoy talking with somebody, now I met somebody at a show a week ago Sunday on the 25th, and this woman was across the aisle from me. And, it was nothing came of it, nothing will come of it, nothing ever would come of it, and so on. And she's in a relationship, so on. But I enjoyed talking to her so much. We had so much in common, and that's a common ground when you have somebody whose company you thoroughly enjoy, regardless of what they look like, unless they're an ogre, of course. But, if you have somebody whose company you thoroughly enjoy, you look forward to, and you can't wait to talk with this person, and you call them, and so on and so forth, that, to me, is a definite plus. If you're physically attracted to them, that's something else. But physical attraction changes. Barbara DeAngelis, in one of her books, said, I want my husband to love me when I get old from my mind. And that really resonated with me because, we don't stay the same. Our physical appearance changes as we grow, but our emotions do not. And our personality does not. And that's the main thing. So many people get caught up in the physical, and I have a little line that I wrote in my book saying that we get so caught up with the wrapping paper until we realize it's being used to carry out yesterday's garbage. And then all of a sudden, that's another thing that I wrote in the book. People get caught up in the wrapping paper. And it was a thing that Dr. Wayne Dyer said in one of his CDs once. I love him. He's my mentor, by the way. But anyhow, he said, it's like going to the supermarket, picking up a package of frozen broccoli, taking the package home, boiling the water. He said, opening the package, throwing the broccoli in the garbage, and putting the wrapper in the paper, in the water. In other words, we fall in love with the outside, whereas the true love comes from falling for the inside. Aren't you in agreement with that?
I am, and it's interesting because I also get a lot of clients that are like, but I want him to be in love with me. And it's like, that's great, but you need something that's going to last in there.
Right.
And the in love is, it's great to have that in love. And I think ideally, yes, you have that combination. You are in love and you love that person.
Right.
And the in love extends beyond the wrapper. And we have to look beyond that wrapper because, as you say, eventually that wrapper is going to fade, it's going to shift, and it's change. And I know for me, when I truly love somebody, the wrapper can shift and change, and I'm still seeing all of the amazing, beautiful person right there in front of me. I'm still seeing the attraction.
Exactly.
And
That's what real love is.
And that's what it is. And I get a lot of, with my clients, and I work with them, and I let them know too that, when you're really in love with somebody or you really love somebody, you don't mind doing all the small things. You step up into that compassionate space where maybe you wouldn't elsewhere.
Right.
It's very easy to be in that space, and you can hang out and do absolutely nothing with that person and have the most amazing time.
Exactly.
Because
just looking at each other, is amazing.
It's amazing. Just being in that presence is amazing, and it's not about, what you're doing or how much money you're spending or any of these things. And those are the things that I think we see shift and change when we really feel, as you say, when souls touch. And
exactly.
And you find yourself being different. You find yourself still being yourself, but you find yourself willing to be in that, for lack of better terminology, evolved state or higher state of operating.
Right. Yeah, I refer to it lovingly as growth.
As growth. And the person
as
that you
start
can
to grow into a relationship, and you start to feel. In other words, my oldest daughter, she said, now she's been married. Oh God, she's been married about 12 years, I guess, 10 or 12 years. And she said to me, she said, I still get excited when he comes home from work. And I think that's beautiful. Most women, oh damn, he's home. or so, but in my middle daughter is she's been married now. So let me see. Oh God, she's been married for about 4 years and 5 years, and she's got a set of fraternal twins and a year and a half old underneath them, and they're a riot. But they get along famously too. I mean, they have their spats. If you don't have spats, you've got to be able to give your opinion out without fear. But it's when you hold a grudge, never go to sleep mad at each other, apologize, kiss, make up, whatever. Because if you truly love somebody, you will. If you love them and care about them, I mean, let's face it, I've often wondered what would happen if a certain person, lost a limb or lost 2 limbs and was unable to take care of themselves. Would you do it? If you love somebody, yes, you would. Because it's the spirit connection. It's the spirit connection.
Absolutely, and that's the things that we need to. Maybe we need to make those for like marriage prerequisites or something.
Yeah, they should.
Would you do this if this person became a quadriplegic? Would you be willing to still be there? If their face got distorted along the way, would you still be there?
Yeah.
And I think those are important factors. And you bring up, I think too, when people are in love. Sometimes, or they're just looking at the wrapping, I should say, I notice that they're actually afraid to talk to each other a lot of times. They're afraid to have the conversations that you need to have for a lasting relationship. And when you really love somebody, you can have those conversations in a loving way. And when those arguments, as you mentioned, go and they expand and you don't want to go to bed angry, not just because of what it's doing to your relationship, but what it's doing to you.
Exactly.
It's tremendously damaging you. You're the one that's being hurt by it more than anything. So there are a lot of feelings and there are a lot of emotions. And as I tell people, if you didn't care for the person, you wouldn't get upset with them. You'd just be gone.
Right.
So if you had no feelings, you'd be gone.
No, I was going to say it's interesting that I remember one time I had a couple come to my office, and this many years ago. And as you had mentioned, I'm a master clinical hypnotherapist, and I had the guy called me up and he said, "Do you take insurance?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Well, I'm going to have to go see a regular psychologist who takes insurance." I said, "Well, what's your status?" He said, "Well, my wife has left me." I said, "You can do this one of 2 ways." And he said, "What is that?" I said, "You can go see a psychologist." I said, and by the time and pay the copay, I said, and if you want to do it that way, I said, she might be remarried to somebody else by the time you get everything straightened out with you. I said, but if you come and see me 3 or 4 times, I said, you might have her back if you bring her the 3rd or 4th time. I said, you're going to part with the same amount of money. It's just going to take longer. I said, give it a shot. But what was interesting, and this was really interesting, I put them both on the third visit into a very relaxed, focused state. And I had his inner child talk to her inner child. And boy, the stuff that came out between the two of them, all three of us had tears. But the little girl in her was talking to the little boy in him, and it was like listening to a couple of 5 or 6 year olds talk to each other, and the truth was coming out, and it was beautiful. And as far as I know, they're still together.
Oh wow.
But it took a lot to bring that out, but I had to work it that way. I mean, you have to have alternatives. I like to have different tools in my toolbox to work with. So. But I saw that as a hasty way of getting them back together. So it was fascinating. It really is. Some of the stuff that I do, I know I'm not doing it. I know I'm just a messenger.
Right.
But it's fascinating. So.
And and it is interesting because there are so many patterns there. I mean, you have a blend, as you well know, and I would like to have you share that. Some of the patterns that we tend to do in relationships and some of those programmings, and they come from very, very early on. They come from our parents and all these different things that we go through in life.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other piece of it is keeping in mind that we always have a choice to change these patterns or to be different. Just because your parents did it, or just because the church told you to do something a certain way, or just because the therapist told you to do it a certain way, doesn't mean that that's the thing for you. And
right.
And you need to find those things. So when we become aware of these patterns, some of those patterns might be really good patterns that you want to keep. Some of them might be patterns that you don't want to follow, and you have to learn to be aware of them and then make those conscious shifts and changes. I mean, I know my parents set up some patterns in their relationship and their marriage, and they were married for well over 50 years. And, one of the things that I always remember from my childhood was that my dad told my mom, "I love you," every day, sincerely told her that. He kissed her every day before he left for work, and he kissed her every day when he came home.
That's
so there
beautiful.
was always an expression of gratitude, and it was an amazing pattern to see.
That's beautiful because it shows that you're constantly thinking of the other person. The other person is on your mind, and when we become complacent and assume that the other person knows, and you know the meaning of the word assume, then all of a sudden things can start to fall apart. The other thing that's very important in a relationship, and it doesn't make much difference in the beginning, but we have different modalities for learning. In other words, like if you have a visual spouse, if I have a visual woman that I'm dating or something like that, I give her flowers, something she can see. But if she's an auditory learner, I will tell her how much I care. And if she's a kinesthetic learner, I would do it with hugs and kisses. And it's, a dominant way of learning. And when you can recognize that in your spouse, that makes things a lot easier too.
And that's part of the language, is learning the language of your partner or your spouse that is important, and realizing that, there are a lot of women, for example, that says, but I want to hear it. I want to get those flowers. I want to have this. And yet that's not how their partner shows it. Their partner shows it through the hug. Their partner shows it by, coming over and taking care of something in the yard, or, they have different ways. So learning not just how we want to get it, but how it's being given to us is important.
Exactly. Like if the husband is a visual learner and the wife is a kinesthetic, she wants hugs, but he will give her flowers. And it'll work, but it'll work much better if he gives her flowers and a hug.
Right.
Because we learn all three ways, but we all have a dominant. Okay, I'm a visual. And the visual person talks faster. Auditory person talks a little bit slower and pronounces their words more carefully. And a kinesthetic learner talks much slower because they want to feel the words out. And it's fascinating. I find it so fascinating, body language and things like that. But it really helps when you know this, when you can help somebody else, because then you can align with them and coach them or help them in their modality of learning so they get it quicker.
And I think too, when each other learns each other's languages, like you say, then you really create this solid base. So if he gives her flowers and she gives him a hug, because that's how they understand,
right,
you've really got a win-win situation.
Definitely. Yeah,
so
definitely.
It's a lot of it has to do with learning that communication, and that's a lot of what I'm going to be covering and in the books that I'm going to be working on this winter is about that communication and understanding those different layers in there and how to understand those different languages that each other's speaking.
It's very important because what I have it in my book, and I'm going to send you out a copy as soon as I get some more in. But what I'd like, what I have in there is I have that same thing pointed out. In other words, you can tell your spouse, because when you first meet somebody and you are madly in love, you are passionately in love, not really in love, but you're fascinated with and you're very attracted to, you touch, you hug, you give flowers, you tell everything. But as time goes on, you fall back into your own way. Okay, you fall back. In other words, if you're an auditory, you go back to just telling the person. Whereas if the person is a visual, they want to be shown. Like you said, it's love languages. And it's language in every type. I've coached people in this that were looking for a raise in their job or promotion or something on how to do it. And I call it the power of rapport, learning how somebody learns. And modeling and mirroring and pacing and leading. It's fascinating stuff. It really is. And I teach it in my courses. So,
yeah, and most definitely it is.
Yeah, well, Tony Robbins calls it the power to influence. I call it the power of rapport. So.
And it is. And
same difference. Yeah.
It's a powerful thing to creating success, no matter what you're creating success in. Whether
when I learned this, Jess, I had a construction company, landscape and construction company with 15 employees, and I had to keep scrambling to get work coming in. And once I learned all this, my closing ratio jumped up 15 to 20%. It was amazing.
And it's true. So, I mean, there you go. That's something, whether it's personal or business relationships, learning to speak those different languages is going to be a key factor with it. Right. And as you say, and this is one of the complaints that happens in relationships is that, well, he used to do all this or she used to be like this. and then it's like all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. And, I can explain some of it, like if two people get married and there's a numerology factor there and that plays into it. And yes, there's some shifts and some changes, but realistically, it comes down to, well, you were trying to do your best to speak somebody else's language, but you've still got to speak your own language sometimes, or, you've got to be willing to make that shift in there. So very, very important. And
it's interesting. So go ahead.
And I just want to note for those of you, because I have a lot of people that have been popping in and out, and a lot of people popping in, not too many popping out tonight, which is great. We've got Bob Burns with us tonight. He's my guest speaker, and for those that are just coming in, he's an author, workshop presenter, motivational speaker, has a background as a master clinical hypnotherapist and master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, Reiki master, motivational strategist. He's got a couple of books out, some that are involving poetry and metaphors, and one that's called The Inner Dynamics of Successful Relationships, which we're focusing on tonight, and another one that he's getting ready to release in a couple of months, which is The Inner Dynamics of Beliefs and Behaviors. So lots of good information here, and that's what we're talking about for those of you that have just joined us and wondering what's happening on our show tonight. So, Bob, maybe you can kind of cue in, because I know when we had a chat I guess it's been about a week and a half ago, that you were mentioning to me that there are certain patterns that people follow. I mean, we've got these different languages that we've been talking about that people speak, but you also mentioned patterns of how we tend to pick people that are very similar, for example, to a parent or somebody that we didn't get approval of younger in life and things like that. Maybe you can touch on some of those patterns and behaviors and things as they relate to steps.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. We usually every time I talk to a couple, or usually I get to talk to either the woman or the guy first, and then I see them as a couple. But it always turns out that, for example, I married my mother twice. Okay, now my mother was a wonderful woman. I loved her dearly, and she was good, but she never showed her emotions. She was not an emotional person, and she never showed it. And I remember one time when I was 18 years old, I smashed up my car, and I came home, and she was sitting there in her chair, and very calm. She said, "Well, tell me what happened." My father was the exact opposite. I mean, he would freak out, and very emotional. But she would just say, "Well, tell me what happened. Tell me about it. Are you okay?" And so on and so forth. And both of my first and second wife were like that, very unemotional. And that's what I was drawn to, but that's not what I wanted. And I've been single now for 16 years, and it's fine. I enjoy living by myself. But what I find is the women that I have been attracted to and have gone out with a couple of times are pretty much the same way. Okay, unemotional, not huggy, not feely or anything like that. Just you can have a good conversation, and there's one in particular that I was crazy about. But still in all, it's, the patterns that they have developed. And we all do that. I tell people when you're going out with somebody and you're madly in love and you're going to get married, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I say, have you met his or her parents? And they'll say, well, yeah, why? I'll say, how did the parents get along? How do they interact? Because that's how your future is going to interact. In my book, I tell about abusers. Okay, abusers, one of the parents could have been an abuser and an abusee, and then the other person, the sibling, the child, is going to be one or the other, and we attract them. And I've had people say to me, what do I have tattooed to my forehead? I'm looking for a loser. And it's amazing because people attract the way they feel, but it's usually one or the other parent. And women can be attracted to a parent that is like their mother. It doesn't necessarily have to be the opposite, one or the other. And that's what we get attracted to. And we don't even know it. I have a set of CDs out. It's a set of 2, and they're called Awareness, the Key to Change. And it's a woman and I having a conversation about all these different things on one CD, and the other one is subliminal. But and you had mentioned earlier that we do have choices, and that's the name of my website is wehavechoices.net. And we do. We have choices. And our choices, unfortunately, a lot of times we're in a hurry. And you had mentioned that too. We're in a hurry for this. We're in a hurry for that. I've got to get married. I've got to get married. I've got to have a girlfriend. I've got to have a boyfriend. I've got to have somebody. You don't got to have anything. You've got to have air, food, and water. That's what you've got to have. Okay, everything else is a desire. And, when you find yourself violently, and I use the term caringly, violently attracted to somebody where you feel you can't live without them, then that's when you really have to get involved with yourself and realize, boy, am I getting obsessive? And obsessive behavior will drive somebody away. I remember many, many years ago, I met this one woman, and I liked her. We went out once, but she was calling me 2 or 3 times a day, and that turned me right off. I just cut her off completely. Because that, to me, is need. When somebody needs you, I don't want to be needed. I want to be wanted. And I think that should be the format for most relationships, to be wanted, not needed.
I'm glad you made that.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you made that differentiation between needed and wanted in there, because there is a tendency, and it usually is women as opposed to men, to over-communicate. And it's like women are like, but I don't want to lose him. I'm afraid I'm going to lose him if I don't let him know this, and I don't let him know that I love him 10 times a day. And it's like, no, you're going to lose him if you keep doing that.
Oh, yeah.
You got to give him some space. You got to give him some room. And, people forget that. And like you say, they get into that space. And when we're in that need space, we are in that basically obsessive space. And when we're there,
right.
We're not in love.
Yeah, once we're there, it's not love anymore, it's need. And when you need somebody, and I've got a chapter on that too, needy versus the caretakers, and that's the name of the chapter. And it never turns out to be good because the person who needs the other person does not consciously know that they need them, but they do. And the person who's the caretaker, will take care of this person, but after a while, it wears thin. Give it a couple of years and it wears thin. The person gets sick and tired of being, taken care of. And the other person, as they grow, wants to feel a little bit more independent. And none of this takes place at the conscious level. Yes, none of it. It's all at the feeling level, below the level of awareness. And that's why people say, it used to be so nice. What happened? It used to be so nice. What happened? They just got used to the partner, the fact that they need them, and they're not aggravated with their partner. They're aggravated with themselves in 90% of the cases. And it's relationships are not easy. And that's why when I told all of my daughters, I said, please don't even consider getting married until you're in your late 20s. And my oldest daughter was in her early 30s, and my one other daughter was 29, and my other daughter now is 27, and she's not married yet. And that's good because you don't even know who you are until you're in your mid to late 20s. I mean, how can you marry somebody when you don't even know who you are? I didn't know who I was when I got married the first time. I had no idea what I was going to be doing. I was an idiot. Let me tell you. That's the way I acted. But I wasn't really. I just acted like one. But, I thought I knew everything and so on. But then as I began to realize that I never dated anybody, I was 17, and I figured this isn't working. So, but, the other thing that a lot of people don't seem to realize, and guys don't like to hear this, but it's true. Women are much stronger than men are, much stronger emotionally. And it's been scientifically proven that twice as many men will commit suicide after a breakup or a divorce as women, number one. And number two, it's been scientifically proven also that out of every 100 breakups, 80 of them are instigated by the female. And, look at the praying mantis. After she mates, she bites his head off and eats him. Men are, and I've told in my seminars, usually when I do a seminar, if I have 50, 60, 70 people, I've had as many as 300, but usually the average is 40 or 50. And when I do a seminar, I'll say, there were probably a lot of men on their way here, but they fell over their egos and couldn't get up. And all the women are nodding their heads and laughing. But, and I'm not knocking males. It's just that males are driven more by ego and intellect, and where women are driven more by emotions. And
I'll throw a piece in there too, as far as women go, because women live in emotions. As I tell a lot of my clients, women live in emotions. We go through emotions every single month out of the year for a huge chunk of our lives, and it's a very natural place of going up and down and highs and lows all over the place.
Right.
Men, on the other hand, don't live in an emotional space as a general rule of thumb. And so you talk about, for example, that suicide rate or something, it takes so much more for them to bring themselves into emotion, to be in a relationship or to care for somebody or to even get to a point of considering marriage or even considering being committed to, saying, a dating relationship. And I like to equivalate it to, for men to put themselves out there and to get vulnerable like that, it's about as scary as being dropped in the Bermuda Triangle or in shark-infested waters 300 miles from land. You know,
right.
it's a scary place for them, for the average male. Now, you've got a few out there that are, you know, very evolved and they're very spiritual and they've got things, but it's not a natural place for most men.
No, it's not. It's not. And I have very, very, very few male friends, but the male friends that I do have are like the ones you described, you know, that are more evolved, that I can sit and talk with. And I find it fascinating. I had a friend of mine tell me once, she said, I bet going out with you is like going out with a gay man who likes sex. And I said, is that a compliment? And she said, yes, it is. She said, because you understand women better than most men do. And I said, well, thank you. But it was funny that she said that. And she's a Mary Kay director. And I'd done a lot of seminars for her unit and everything. But, I mean, I just found that interesting that she would come out and say that, because I never thought of myself that way. I just know that I'm sensitive and, sensitive to people's feelings. And I think that's, people say, how did you get started doing what you're doing? And Jess, my honest answer to it is I was guided into it. Okay, it wasn't something I planned on doing. I was guided into it. It just came to me. And
I think that's true when we look at what we are here to do. A lot of times it ends up coming to us, or sometimes something will repeat itself over and over again until we listen to it.
Right.
And
exactly.
We have in relationships too. I mean, things will repeat over and over again, and if we don't resolve it in one relationship, we're going to carry it into the next relationship. And you talk about those patterns. I mean, I've seen that numerous times where somebody couldn't please a parent in their life, and so they end up picking people to be in relationships with, and then they try to please that parent through the relationship because, as you say, they pick somebody that's like that parent, and then they spend their whole time trying to please that person.
Exactly. Do you remember a while back, Waylon Jennings had a country song, and the song was Just to Satisfy You, and there was a line in that song that I put in my book, and the line went like this: I tried so hard to be what you wanted me to be that somewhere along the way I lost me. And that's what you were just saying. I tried so hard to be what you wanted me to be that somewhere along the way I lost me. And I thought that was a very powerful line.
And this is where we have to help teach along the way of, you've got to be you. This is not about pleasing this parent or that person that you couldn't have before. It's about what do you want to have in a relationship. And that comes back to your word, want. And as I've always said, I want somebody who can be there and who wants to be there without a piece of paper telling them they have to be there.
Exactly. And the other thing that blows me away,
you can be there because you want to be there on that level with me, then fantastic.
And the other thing I could never figure out, even as a little kid, I noticed it. I say little kid, maybe preteens, but somebody would hook up with somebody else and then try to change them. I said, why are you trying to change them? You didn't like them? What do you hook up with them for? I mean, I still see that. Well, he's got to change. She's got to change. Why?
If you feel like you've got to change the person, it's time to pick somebody else.
Exactly. I mean, human behavior to me is probably the most fascinating thing that there is in the universe. There's nothing more fascinating than human behavior. That's
kind of like going to the store and saying, okay, I've just bought this head of lettuce. I've taken it home. I've washed it up. I bought a head of lettuce, and now I want it to be an apple pie.
Right. Exactly. You hit it perfectly. Great metaphor. I want it to be an apple pie. Zap.
I bought a head of lettuce, but I want it to be an apple pie. It's not going to change.
No, I know.
People do change. I'm not saying that people will never, ever change, because they do as they grow and as they become more aware of themselves, but there's still going to be that head of lettuce.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about it.
Even with the growth.
I remember And back in 1966, I'm dating myself now. Back in 1966 on that show Jeopardy, they asked a question, what is the most difficult thing for a person to do? And nobody got the answer, but the answer was change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once habits are established, they're difficult to change. You have to want to. You can't do it for somebody else. You have to want to.
Absolutely.
And, you know, yeah, if you want to get thinner, if you want to get bulkier, if you want to get fatter, if you want to, you know, whatever you want, if you want it bad enough, you will do what it takes. But you have to want it. You can't have somebody else saying, well, you got to stop smoking. You got to stop drinking. You got to stop overeating, because it's not going to make any difference. You have to want it yourself. And that's why I can never figure out why people try to change other people. So, and I've had people say to me, I had a woman say to me, well, what am I going to do with my husband? He can't stop drinking. She said, and I did stop. I said, okay, the only thing you can do is either get a divorce, get into counseling, or lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
I said, because you're not going to get him to change unless he wants to.
Exactly.
So.
And definitely, I mean, it's not about taking something and trying to force it into something else. It's about, if you really want something else, go and focus on getting that something else.
Exactly.
You know, it's an important thing to do. But like you say, a lot of times we have these patterns ingrained, or people get desperate and they're like, I got to have this, and I got to have something now, or I've got to have somebody there. And, you know, when you get into those sort of desperate spaces, it's about coming back and looking at self and looking at things.
When you have to have somebody there, when it's absolutely essential and you need somebody there, you'll take anybody, and that usually ends up disasters.
Yes.
And, you know, because God knows what you'll take. So many people will take somebody just to be with another warm body that abuses and treats them. I know a woman that had a husband, and the husband had taken a loaded gun, pointed it at her head, pulled the trigger, and the gun jammed. Okay, now that to me is sociopathic behavior.
Right.
And I know a lot of other people, you know, that are mentioned. Some of them are mentioned in the book, some of them aren't. But, I mean, nobody's name is mentioned, obviously, or places aren't mentioned either. But everything that's in there is factual. Different things that people have done to other people. And it's scary. It's bizarre. And I often wonder, how could somebody be that nasty, until I read Daniel Goleman's book on emotional intelligence and realized it's, you know, a brain thing, in other words. And the other thing, another book I would recommend is The Sociopath Next Door. That's a wonderful book. Scary, but wonderful.
Mm.
And it's about
and these are things that we have to be aware of. Like you say, we tend to draw people with these types of issues when we're in those desperate states of being with somebody. And it's a very big thing to keep in mind. Now, you talk about some of the subliminal aspects, and you've got a whole ton of audio subliminal programs out there on your website, which again is wehavechoices.net, and that's Bob's website. And you've got just a whole ton of CDs there. And I know when we were talking prior to the show tonight, you were talking about how that works, and I would like for you to explain that, because you were talking with me about how that right and the left brain work in there.
Oh, okay.
To bring things about to really reinforce that programming, and I think it would be good for people to know how that subliminal works, that subliminal audio program works.
Well, the subliminals that I have, every one of them, when somebody orders one, every one of them comes with a script so that you can feel comfortable knowing what you're hearing. All right, you know that this is what's in there. And people have said, well, how do I know that's what's in there? And I said, well, there's certain places, and Radio Shack is one that can separate it so you can hear the words being spoken. Okay, that's to set people's mind at ease. You do not read the script. You're just there for your personal feelings of well-being. But the way they work is they're done with male and female voices, okay, because different people are more receptive to different genders. Now, you can't consciously hear these voices, and that's why the script, but you can subconsciously, at the emotional level, hear them. Now, it's also stated, in other words, for example, I am confident. Confident am I. They're also stated in reverse, because when you state something in reverse like that, the right brain flips it. Okay, so when the right brain, when you say to the right hemisphere of the brain, confident am I, the right brain hears I am confident. So basically, it's whole brain technology. Now, the other thing is there's a permissive track in there saying it's okay to be confident. And I'm just using confident as, because I can't remember to say 5 or 6 words in reverse, so I just use that one. But anyway, that's the way they work, and they engage. In other words, you're getting permission, number one. You're getting, the right brain, the whole brain technology, and they work. I had a woman purchase one on weight management, and she said, Bob, I play it when I'm preparing breakfast for the family, and I play it at night when I'm preparing dinner. She said, over 6 weeks, I dropped 22 pounds. And there's affirmations in that CD, for example, I only eat when I am hungry. I stop eating when I am full. The permissive track is it's okay to only eat when you're hungry. It's okay to stop eating when you're full because, most of us have grown up hearing the kids in China are starving, and then you get smacked when you say, well, send this to them. But that's the stuff that we hear growing up, a lot of it, and the permissive track is to get rid of that. There's another track in there, I am forgiven, I forgive all others, I forgive myself. That eliminates the need to blame anybody for anything. And another one in there is it's okay to do better than mom, it's okay to do better than dad, because I've had people come to me that are stuck at a certain income level, and it turns out that one of their parents was at that income level. So, I have all these things in there, and I've got them on a multitude of topics, and I'm going to get into studio and start creating some more next year. But they're all done in studio. They all have music that people enjoy listening to, because if you enjoy listening to the music, because that's what you're really hearing consciously, if you enjoy listening to the music, you play the CD. If you play the CD, you will get results. And I tell people, play the CD once a day. You don't have to sit and listen to it. You can play it in the background while you're watching a TV show or something. Just play it in the background, so all you have to do is hear it. I said, do it once a day for 30 days. If you have not got the results, or if you don't realize a difference, then just call me and I will send you your money back and you can keep the CD. And nobody's taken me up on that yet because they haven't had to, because they work.
That's awesome.
So that's the way it is. And I'm very, very careful when I put them in. I have one called No More Insomnia for people who have trouble sleeping. And on the label it says, please do not listen to this while driving. And, the affirmations in there, my body is so relaxed, I feel my muscles relaxing. Now, you don't want to listen to that while you're driving. And I have one called Your Personal Meditation. You have to put that
on there these days.
I have one called Your Personal Meditation, and that's not a subliminal. That's meditation CD, and there's a hypnotic induction in your right ear by a female and a hypnotic induction in your left ear by me. And it's 3 minutes. And then there's 25 minutes of music and sounds in between that are really bizarre, and then the last 2 minutes is me counting you back up into the room. And I had a guy call me up, and he said, you got some nerve charging me $20 for a CD that was only 5 minutes long. I said, Dan, it's a half hour. He said, no, it's not. He said, it's 5 minutes. I said, why do you say that? He said, because I was tuning out the woman's voice and trying to hear you, and all of a sudden you were counting me up. He zoned out. But I made that CD because people that want to meditate, a lot of times people have a real challenge getting in state. So that CD puts you in state. Maybe it puts you too much in state. But I tell people, sit with a headset or sit between two speakers. Decide what you want to meditate on. Put your hand on play, close your eyes, and figure out what it is I want to meditate on, and then hit play and let that take you into that meditation. And they work. They're very good. They're very good CDs. It was 10 hours in studio with that one.
Wow.
Mixing it.
And these are just such great points, I think, too, especially as we're kind of winding down our year, and a lot of people work with affirmations and things like that, that if you're a person that's working with affirmations and statements, positive statements and things like that, that you do want to bring in reading it in reverse, because when you do that to help with the synchronization of the brain, to make sure that it is reaching both sides of the brain, because otherwise it's kind of like what would I want to say? It's kind of like going halfway home.
Right. There you go. Very
you
good.
get in your car and you only drive halfway there.
Right.
and you don't go all the way there. So, and that could be an interesting parallel in of itself. Maybe that's a light bulb that's going off for me right now. Is if something's only coming halfway into you, like it gets started, but then it never quite reaches you. If you start your success pattern and these opportunities come in, but they don't actually manifest, maybe you want to read some things in reverse.
Exactly. If you read photo reading, if you hold the book upside down and you look above the book and you just turn the pages, I had one of my instructors, Brian Boheim, who was phenomenal, and he did that with the book. And he said, take the book, take a page, and just read a line from the page, and I'll tell you the page number. And he did.
Wow.
And but he was upside down, and he's just going through it, letting his subconscious take it in. See, because we, as I said in the beginning, are feeling individuals. Feelings come from emotions. Emotions come from the subconscious. And Dr. Milton Erickson, the foremost authority on hypnotherapy, who was dyslexic, learning disabled, tone deaf, colorblind, and everything else, and asthmatic, and lived in Arizona because of that. But he said our conscious mind makes a decision to go someplace, and our subconscious mind gets us there. And when you think about how many times have you driven to a location and don't remember driving there? Oh, I'm here already. It's our subconscious that gets us there. And I like to use the metaphor or the example of learning how to drive a stick-shift car. And that is very humorous to a point. When you stop and think about driving a stick-shift car, you're at conscious incompetence. And you have to let the clutch out, but you have to step on the gas. And half the time you jerk the car, you stall it, and, bump your head and everything like that. And then after you've practiced enough times, you get to conscious competence. Now you do it. You still jerk the car a little bit, but at least you know what to do now, and you can drive, go through all 3 or 4 or 5 gears without stalling. Then you go to unconscious incompetence. Now you're doing all right now, but the only thing is you pull up on a hill at a red light, and behind you is a brand new Mercedes. So what do? You pull up the emergency brake, you rev up the gas pedal, and you leave a foot of rubber, 2 or 3 feet of rubber as you're pulling away, but you don't hit the Mercedes, okay? And the last one is unconscious competence. You don't even notice what's behind you. You just pull away. But, These are the things that we go through in learning. It's like riding a bicycle. It's like swimming. It's like everything. And when you get plugged into certain behaviors, then you can roll with them. And that's what these subliminals help people do, change their eating habits, become more confident. And I've got a couple of them that have the same song playing all the way through, so you can listen to them or play them while you're sleeping, and you won't be awakened by the changing of the music. And one of them is called The Power Within, and the other one is called Extreme Self-Confidence. And, you just play those and wake up in the morning feeling a lot different. Plus, when I go to sleep at night, too, I wanted to share this with anybody who's listening, is I always use the I am discourses. When I go to sleep at night, I am love, I am health, I am this, I am that. I say that until I fall asleep saying this. Mm-hmm. Makes a big difference.
And there's something about the I am statements for people, that are trying to work with that, is that you have to bring it as if the I am brings it present. It brings it sometimes present and also as if it's already existing in your life. So, for example, if you're trying to draw love in your life and you want that true love to come into your life, it's like you want to say, I am drawing true love into my life.
Right, exactly.
So it's active and it's present. as opposed to I'm hoping it's going to get here, or I am working on this, or things like that. So I am drawing this into my life, makes it active, makes it present. And when we're in that space, it's also doing something that's a very key point of mine with compassion, which is it expresses gratitude at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really cool thing when you're like doing multiple things at once.
Exactly it is. And that brings me to another book I'd like to recommend, even though I didn't write it, and it's called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And that book reminded me, I have not been sick or been to the doctors in 25 years. And the reason is I don't have time to get sick. I have no desire to get sick. I had a cold once. It lasted 2 days. That's it. And most people plan on getting sick. Most people plan their lives that way. I always get sick in the spring, or I always get sick in the fall. Bob, are you going to get a flu shot? Why would I get a flu shot? I don't get the flu. But, your mind controls your body, and you know that as well as I do. Your mind controls your body. When you make up your mind for something, your body responds. And people say, well, how do you know that? I'll say, well, why don't you go visit somebody who has dementia or Alzheimer's and see what kind of shape their body's in, because their mind's not controlling it anymore. Mm-hmm. And those are it's very interesting, because we were set up and we were sent here to this planet with all these tools, and we don't use them. We would rather go get, not me or you, but would rather go get a pill. Mm-hmm. Go get a pill for this or a pill for that. Now there's a pill for everything.
It's true. I've got somebody, and I believe it's the producer of our show, Daniel, is typing in, and he says, "Have you heard of Earl Nightingale?"
Oh God, yes, my hero. What are you kidding?
One of the big ones there. And it's like you say, your mind really has this powerful place, and I oftentimes use the metaphor of, somebody comes in and they say, but I'm starving, and you say, great, here's a whole feast of food. Eat away, have what you want. There's healthy food, there's not healthy food, whatever you want, you can have it. Whole feast there. But then they sit there and they don't eat it. And right. They sit there and go, but I'm starving. And it's like, the thing is there's amazing tools out there. You have amazing tools. I have amazing tools. And the bottom line is you have to use those tools for them to work.
Yeah, you have to. There's no doubt about it.
If you never put the CD in the player, you're never going to get the benefits of that subliminal programming. So
well, people they say so many people will buy self-improvement CDs, tapes, books, and then don't use them. They don't use them, and it doesn't work by osmosis. You have to read it or listen to it, and right. And that's the way it works. And it's like buying, it's like having a whole cupboard full of food and starving to death. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
You think absolutely ridiculous. I just want to share a very brief fact with you that maybe will bring it home to a lot of people about comfort zones and how we go what we're used to. And there was a firing squad I believe it was in Syria in the 40s, 50s, and I think in the early 60s. And every time somebody was sentenced to go before the squad, a day before they were sentenced to go before the squad, the executioner would bring them up, the judge would bring them up, and he'd say, I'm going to give you a choice. You can go before the squad or you can go through the black door. Which is it? And he said, out of every 100 people, 95 to 98 would take the squad. And when asked what was behind the black door, he said freedom. But you see, people go with where they know is going to happen, even if they don't like it. But it's familiar. That's why so many people will stay in relationships that are like that, that are horrible. So many people will stay in jobs they hate because it's familiar, and that is sad.
Right. The familiar, uncomfortable, as opposed to the uncomfortable change that gives you what you want, and that is
exactly,
a big thing. Well, Bob, I want to appreciate having you on the show tonight. I mean, it's been wonderful having you here. We're winding down, and I've got to put a couple of points in here before I close out tonight. But
Okay.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's been late your time, and you've shared just an amazing amount of information, and I hope anybody who joined us late will certainly go back and catch it in the archives because, there's been so much shared here tonight. And, again, I want to just let people know that if you'd like to explore more of Bob's work, his website is at wehavechoices.net. And you can go in there and you can see the books he has, and he's got his subliminal CDs on there that you can check out and contact him that way. So, Bob, thank you so much for being on here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. It was my pleasure indeed. So you take care, and God bless.
Bless you too. Thank you.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye. And so as we're winding down here tonight, I just want to bring up a couple of things. Next week on Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour, I will have Jean Logan on. She's going to be talking about her work with glyphs and signs and how to use them. It's going to be a really interesting thing. She's going to be probably, I'd say, one of three speakers that are going to kind of be focusing on the universal shifts that are happening, the convergence and everything that's coming up. And so she's going to have an amazing thing about the work she does and how we can use glyphs in our life and how they work. And that is glyphs as in GLYPHS and signs and symbols. And that's going to be just wonderful. Again, you can stay up with any of the work I have regarding the Compassion Tour and other events going on for me through Jessie Ann Nichols George .eventbrite.com. Also, you can connect with me on Facebook, both personally and through my Activating Compassion page. Check out my blog at getyourblisson.tumblr.com. And you can also go to my website at bliss.freetzy.com. Those are all listed at the bottom of the show description. As a listener, don't forget that you, whether you're listening in the archives or live, that you do have that opportunity to take advantage of my unlimited email coaching right now at 90% off. And you can also take advantage of the quantum energy work with unlimited email coaching at 75% off. And I've been working with one of our listeners that received a free month of that email coaching, and it's just been a phenomenal experience with her. It's been great. Lindsay was one of those people. And keep in mind that this is always based on availability, so it's kind of first come, first serve, and as those slots are booked up, I won't always be able to offer that kind of discount level for you. And don't forget, we've got a lot of shows here on Main Street Universe throughout the week. Wednesday mornings, Daniel, Janice, Brett, they're on. They're looking at different things. They have different topics they're discussing. We have Evan on Thursday mornings at 11 a.m. with the Zariana Show. Kevin Baird walking on the sidewalk with his Horizon Oracle Journeys. He's been coming back in and working on trying some different things. He was on Monday, so just check in with us, and we'll be happy to just touch base. That you can go in and check and see what the upcoming shows are. So that's going to be a good way to stay on top of when his is coming in. And he was very, very busy, I know, the other day when he was on Monday. And, again, I've got some just incredible upcoming guests. Like I mentioned, Jean Logan is coming up next week, following Jean on the winter solstice time and the convergence time. I'm going to be having Tina Irwin. She's with the Edgar Cayce Institute organization, and then following her the last week of December, I'm going to be having Claire Heaton on, and she does some phenomenal work with music and different things, and she also does some things with the ascension work. So basically we're going to have three different guests in there that are going to be focusing on this huge universal transformation we have going on. So you definitely don't want to miss those shows. And then I will be following up as well, giving people the opportunity for some intuitive coaching coming up. So watch for those dates. I've got a lot of great people lined up in the upcoming weeks. And again, I want to say this is Jessie Ann Nichols George. I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. I look forward to seeing you back here next week as we delve more into activating compassion. Don't forget that if you've enjoyed the show this evening, to share it with others. It'll be available at the same link in our archives, and I'm going to be leaving you tonight with the song Yearning For, also known as Over and Over by Shemshai. And I look forward to seeing you again next week right here on Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend and have an absolutely fantastic week.
And if I could see what makes me blind, I would soar to the edge of my mind and to touch what seems unreal, just to show you the way that I feel. And we are in time with time, one with the season of change inside. And we are in tune with the tune, caught in a balance of sun and moon. Oh, deep inside, the light within, shining to show you it's here to begin. When all I have is all I need, I will soar to the edge of eternity. And we see it eye to eye, one within love to be for the divine. And we're walking hand in hand, caught in the balance of God and man. Over and over, life is your lover, learning to walk just a little bit slower, whispering secrets that you can't keep it. No turning back now, this time we reveal it. One to another, all will discover the essence within the most beautiful lover. Time is still turning, the love is still burning. Deep in your spirit, your heart still yearning for. Yearning for. When all we have is all we need, all that we ask for shall be received. And we see in eye to eye, one within love to be for the divine. And we're walking hand in hand, caught in the balance of God and man. And we are in time with time, one with the season of change inside. And we are in tune with the tune of life in the circle and love in bloom. Over and over, life is your lover, learning to walk just a little bit slower, whispering secrets that you can't keep it. No turning back now, this time we reveal it. One to another, all will discover the essence within the most beautiful lover. Time is still turning, the love is still burning. Deep in your spirit, your heart still yearning for. Over and over,